The moment my hearing came back, the very first thing I wanted to do was gloat. Specifically, to Lachlan Doyle, my nemesis, my archrival. But I didn't expect to walk in on him staring at a Polaroid of me, his voice dripping with pathetic longing. "Wifey, when are you finally going to fall for me?" So, I made a split-second decision. I kept my mouth shut. I let him believe I was still deaf. I watched his little performance unfold. His hands moved sharply. "Why are you here again?" But out of his mouth came a completely different story. A whine, really. "Boo-hoo. Wifey, you're finally here. We'd been at each other's throats since we were kids. And for the past 3 years, ever since the car accident that stole my hearing, he'd been hovering around me like a bad smell. Every single day. Sometimes he'd just show up to annoy me. Other times, he'd pick a fight using sign language. Yes, you heard that right. The man actually learned American Sign Language just so he could argue with me. Lachlan had gone to his office at Doyle Holdings early that morning. When I arrived, the receptionist didn't even try to stop me. She knew the drill. Me storming into his office to pick a fight was basically a weekly ritual at this point. The front desk staff smiled and nodded at me as I passed. I nodded back, turning toward the private elevator. Suddenly, I heard whispers behind me. Actual, audible whispers. "The boss's lady is here again. God, I shipped them so hard, Mr. Doyle's face is going to split from smiling so much today." I froze. I turned around, confused. The receptionists, realizing I was looking at them, immediately shut up and pretended to work. "The boss's lady? Mr. Doyle? Are they talking about Lachlan? Does that mean Lachlan has a girlfriend?" Before I could process this earth-shattering information, the elevator dinged. Top floor. I pushed open the heavy oak doors to Lachlan's office. He was the only one there. He was sitting on his leather sofa, staring intently at something in his hand. He looked completely mesmerized. I hadn't even taken a full step inside when I heard him sigh. A deep, pathetic sound. "Wifey. When are you finally going to fall for me, wifey?" Oh. So he was pining over someone. Interesting. I crept closer, dying to see which poor, unfortunate soul had captured Lachlan Doyle's cold, dead heart. I peeked over his shoulder. The photo in his hand looked familiar. Wait. Holy shit. That was me. It was an old Polaroid, the edges worn white. Judging by my baby face, it must have been taken years ago. Lachlan finally sensed my presence. He jumped like he'd been electrocuted, slamming the photo face down on the coffee table. His face contorted into a scowl. His hands moved sharply, signing aggressive ASL at me. Asterisk, why are you here again? You don't make any sound when you walk? Asterisk. His eyebrows were furrowed, looking for all the world like my presence was physically painful to him. But for the first time in 3 years, I caught something else. A flicker in his eyes. Raw, barely contained adoration. Lachlan Doyle. Likes me? Suddenly, a mischievous thought bloomed in my mind. I decided right then and there not to tell him my hearing was back. Not yet. I wanted to watch this performance. I watched his hand sign, asterisk get out, I'm busy, asterisk, but out of his mouth came a soft, whiny murmur, boo-hoo, wifey, you're finally here, I missed you. My hearing loss happened after I was an adult. At the time, the doctor said there was a chance for recovery, so I never bothered learning to read lips. I always assumed that when Lachlan was mumbling under his breath while signing at me, he was cursing me out. Interesting. Very interesting. I raised my hands and signed back. Why are you stealing my photo? As I signed, I reached out and snatched the Polaroid from the table. I didn't remember taking this photo. Judging by the angle, it looked like a candid shot. Stolen. Lachlan, you sneaky little devil. You really are full of surprises. Lachlan panicked. He lunged forward. Hey, give that back. It's mine. He snatched the photo back, tucking it into his suit pocket. But his hand signed something completely different. Asterisk, I keep it to remind myself of my enemy motivation. Asterisk, he patted his pocket and I heard him mutter under his breath, the photo is mine and the person is mine too. Then, as if realizing what he just thought, a bright red flush crept up his neck and settled on his ears. He looked oddly innocent, like a blushing schoolboy. It was almost noon. I looked into Lachlan's eyes, which were secretly filled with expectation. I signed. Asterisk, I'm hungry. Mr. Doyle wouldn't mind buying me lunch, would he? Asterisk, Lachlan rolled his eyes. He signed back with exaggerated annoyance. Asterisk, did the great Lyra Lawson go bankrupt? You need to beg for food now. Asterisk, if I hadn't heard him whisper I'd love to in the most pathetic voice imaginable, I might have actually believed his act. I pretended to turn around and leave. Fine, don't treat me just as I expected. I hadn't even reached the door when Lachlan grabbed his jacket and sprinted after me. He caught my sleeve, signing quickly. Asterisk, I'm not so broke that I can't afford one meal. Let's go, princess. Asterisk, I pulled my sleeve out of his grip. Lachlan froze for a second, his eyes went wide, and for a moment, he looked like a kicked puppy. Idiot, I sighed internally. I signed. Asterisk, I left in a hurry and forgot my contacts. Everything is blurry. Hold on to me. Asterisk. Then, I reached out and grabbed his sleeve myself. Lachlan's reaction time was a solid 3 minutes. He looked at me. Then he looked at my hand on his sleeve. He bit his lip, trying desperately to suppress a grin. He failed, trying to look cool. He signed, you need a guide just to walk out the door? You're hopeless. Walking out of the building, countless employees nodded and smiled at us. I heard every single one of them whisper good afternoon, Mrs. Doyle, or the boss's lady, but I had to keep my face blank. I pretended I heard nothing. So, they weren't saying hello all those times. This had Lachlan's fingerprints all over it. Childish. I chose the most expensive place in the city, the Skyline Lounge. Lachlan had money to burn, and he would never say no to me. The atmosphere was impeccable. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of half the city. The hostess greeted us enthusiastically. Are you two celebrating something? We have a special today. Complimentary champagne for power couples. I was about to shake my head. Lachlan beat me to it. Yes, we are. And my partner prefers quiet. A private booth, please, of course, sir. Right this way. After the hostess left, I played dumb. I signed. What did she say to you? Lachlan signed back with a straight face. She said I look too handsome, so she's giving us free drinks. Shameless. Absolutely shameless. We had just received our drinks when a voice I detested cut through the air behind me. Lyra, is that you? I didn't turn around. A woman walked right up to our table and tapped my shoulder aggressively. Oh, right. I forgot. You're deaf now. I looked up. Standing there was Brittany Lawson, my stepsister. Or rather, Brit. Her face was caked in makeup, looking a bit too plastic for a Tuesday afternoon. Ever since my stepmother, Melinda, maneuvered her way into our family and pissed my mom off to the point of suicide, these two had been insufferable. Brittany was the worst. She took every opportunity to step on me. I didn't bother responding. I looked back down at my menu, but Brittany wasn't done. The man hanging off her arm asked, Babe, who is this? Oh, just my dad's late ex-wife's daughter. The useless burden. The man looked shocked. Jesus, Brit, can you say that? Won't she get mad? It's fine, Brittany said loudly, waving her hand dismissively. She's broken. Her ears don't work. She's basically a vegetable. You think she can compete with me for the inheritance? Inheritance? I almost laughed out loud. She was so stupid it was tragic. She and her mother clearly didn't know the truth. My useless father, Edward, never held any real shares in Lawson Enterprises. My grandfather knew exactly what kind of scumbag his son was. When I turned 18, he transferred all the voting shares directly to me via an irrevocable trust. Did they really think grandfather would hand over his life's work to a mistress and her brat? I didn't plan on reacting to Brittany's tantrum. I was supposed to be deaf, after all. But the next second, Brittany screamed. Lachlan had accidentally knocked over his fresh, piping hot Americano. The dark liquid splashed all over Brittany's hand and expensive dress. Her skin turned red instantly. Lachlan, what the hell, my bad, Lachlan drawled, leaning back in his chair. I did it on purpose. Don't take it personally, wait. Not on purpose? But, I looked at Lachlan. He looked bored. Arrogant. The word restraint was not in his dictionary. As expected, Brittany was fuming, but she couldn't do anything. She couldn't afford to offend Lachlan Doyle. She turned to storm off, but Lachlan stood up, blocking her path. Just because you don't mind getting burned doesn't mean I don't mind your pollution. Apologize to Lyra. Brittany gritted her teeth. She mumbled. Sorry, Lachlan didn't move. Is that your idea of an apology? She can't hear you. Genius. Use sign language. Don't know how? Google it. Or did you forget your phone along with your brain? I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from laughing. Pretending to be deaf was an extreme sport. I buried my face in my napkin. Brittany was shaking with rage. Lachlan, don't push it. Oh, I can push it way further, Lachlan said, his voice dropping to a dangerous calm. Do you want to call your daddy? Or whatever sugar daddy you're with today? Brittany looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. Her face was a delightful shade of purple. After 10 minutes of struggling with a YouTube tutorial, she finally managed a clumsy sign for I'm sorry. Once Brittany and her boy toy scrambled away, I wanted to say thank you. Then I remembered. Deaf. Right. I switched to ASL. Lachlan. Thank you. Don't mention it. He signed back. I just hate seeing trash pollute my air. O. Okay then. I went back to eating. Then I heard him mutter. I don't want to thank you. I want a kiss. I choked on my sparkling water, spraying it everywhere. Lachlan jumped up, grabbing napkins to help me clean up. I signed frantically, choked. Sorry, my face was burning. Idiot. Wait, that last part wasn't ASL. I looked up at him sharply. He looked confused. He signed, what's wrong? I shook my head. Being around Lachlan while pretending to be deaf was hazardous to my health. The man was a walking contradiction. He signed, Lyra, is your brain broken too? Can't you see this project is a scam, He snatched the business proposal I'd been looking at earlier out of my bag. I hadn't planned on taking the project anyway. I knew it was a trap. I was deaf, supposedly, not blind. He leaned back in his chair, looking every bit the arrogant CEO. If I couldn't hear him, I'd have thought he was mocking me. But then he said, what kind of garbage project is this? My wifey shouldn't waste her time on this, Wifey. I'll give you a $50 million investment. Just look at me, okay? Please? I really wanted to say, okay, everyone has their pride, but that was $50 million. USD. Lachlan frowned, signing again, why are you staring at me, planning something evil, I hadn't noticed before, but he was unfairly handsome. I always knew Lachlan was good-looking. That was why, when we first met as kids, I mistook him for a pretty girl and kissed him smack on the lips. Our rivalry started right there. But unlike what I thought, Lachlan didn't seem to hate that kiss. I blinked. I signed, Lachlan, you're handsome. Teasing Lachlan was becoming my new favorite hobby. He froze. His eyes went wide. Recovering quickly, his hands flew in a flurry of signs. You. you're crazy, sick, asterisk. His handsome face turned bright red, the blush spreading all the way down his neck. But his mouth said, I want to kiss her so bad. I scooted my chair back a little. Sometimes I genuinely worried about Lachlan's mental state. Does he have split personalities? If he does, is the $50 million offer still valid? I was beginning to suspect the universe had played some kind of cosmic joke on me. Because the cold, vicious tyrant known as Lachlan Doyle apparently had two modes. Public mode, I hate Lyra Lawson. She's unbearable. Private mode, Wifey looked at me for 3 seconds today. We're basically married. I needed evidence. Preferably enough to blackmail him for the rest of our lives. So I decided to test him. I slowly reached across the table and tapped the business proposal still clutched in his hand. Then I signed sweetly. 50 million? Mr. Doyle must be plotting something. Lachlan scoffed dramatically. His hands moved lazily. Aren't you always accusing me of being evil? Think whatever you want. Meanwhile, his mouth betrayed him instantly. If I give Wifey 100 million, will she let me hold her hand again? I nearly aspirated a lemon slice. God. This man was hopeless. I steadied myself and signed again. 100 million sounds more sincere. Lachlan narrowed his eyes suspiciously. For a terrifying second, I thought he'd realized I could hear him. Instead, he leaned forward slightly. His gaze dropped to my lips. Then he signed. A greedy woman like you would bankrupt any man. But under his breath. Bankrupt me then. Please. I looked away so fast I almost gave myself whiplash. Nope. Absolutely not. I refused to let him see me blush first. The waiter arrived with our food, saving my dignity. Lachlan immediately pulled my plate closer and began cutting my steak into bite-sized pieces without even asking. Naturally, his hand signed something rude while he did it. A child could probably use a knife better than you. His voice, however, was painfully tender. What if Wifey cuts herself? I stared at him. He noticed. His movements paused. What? He asked out loud automatically. Then his expression froze. Slowly, very slowly, horror dawned across his face. Because deaf people generally didn't react to spoken words. The air between us turned deadly still. Lachlan's eyes sharpened. My heart dropped straight into hell. Think, Lyra. Think. I immediately grabbed my water and pointed at my throat dramatically. Then I signed exaggeratedly. Ahem. Your lips moved weirdly. It startled me. 3 seconds passed. Then 5. Then Lachlan relaxed. Barely. You're an idiot, he muttered under his breath, sounding suspiciously relieved. His hand signed. Asterisk eat your food before I throw it away asterisk. Disaster narrowly avoided. I lowered my head and focused intensely on my steak while mentally planning my funeral. Unfortunately, peace never lasted long around me. Halfway through lunch, the restaurant manager suddenly approached our table with several servers behind him carrying an enormous 3-tier dessert tray covered in sparklers. The entire restaurant turned to look. Oh no. No no no. The manager beamed. Congratulations to Mr. Doyle and his future wife on your anniversary. Silence. Absolute silence. I turned toward Lachlan slowly. Very slowly. Lachlan looked like someone had unplugged his soul from his body. The manager continued enthusiastically. Mr. Doyle reserved this arrangement months ago. He specifically instructed us to prepare the ring dessert once Miss Lawson finally agreed to date him. The poor man stopped talking when he noticed Lachlan's expression, which currently resembled a public execution. My eyes drifted downward. There, hidden among the desserts, was a tiny velvet ring box. I looked back at Lachlan. Lachlan looked back at me. Then, incredibly, this grown man panicked. Asterisk shut up and leave asterisk, his hand signed violently. But his mouth betrayed the truth instantly. Oh my God. I'm going to die. The manager fled. The surrounding diners immediately pretended not to stare. Lachlan sat perfectly still. Red crept slowly up his neck. Then higher. Then all the way to his ears. I had never seen him embarrassed before. Not once in my life. And now? Now he looked like he wanted the earth to swallow him whole. I should have let him suffer. Instead, I found myself signing carefully. Asterisk, you prepared this before I agreed to date you. Asterisk. Lachlan refused to look at me. His jaw tightened. His fingers moved stiffly. Asterisk, the restaurant misunderstood a business arrangement. Asterisk. I said automatically. The second the sound left my mouth, time stopped. Lachlan froze. I froze. The entire universe froze. Because I had answered him. Out loud. Not in sign language. Out loud. Lachlan stared at me. I stared at Lachlan. A waiter in the distance dropped a spoon. Clang. Lachlan blinked once. Then twice. Slowly, dangerously slowly, he leaned forward. His voice came out terrifyingly calm. Lyra. I had exactly two choices. Lie. Or run. Unfortunately, my survival instincts failed me completely. So instead, I blurted. You called me wifey like 37. Before the appetizers even arrived. For one long, horrifying second, Lachlan Doyle stopped functioning as a human being. His brain visibly shut down. I watched it happen in real time. His expression blanked. His eyes lost focus. Then. 37, he repeated faintly. Not you can hear. Not how long have you known? Not you lied to me. No. 37. I pressed my lips together. This was not the important part of the conversation. Lachlan suddenly stood up so fast his chair screeched across the floor. Every head in the restaurant turned again. He looked like a man moments away from cardiac arrest. You. He pointed at me accusingly. You can hear me? I winced slightly. Technically? Yes. Technically? His voice cracked. Actually cracked. I have been talking to myself in front of you for weeks. I coughed awkwardly. 3 months. Lachlan went completely still. Then he laughed. Not a happy laugh. Not even a sane laugh. The kind of laugh people made right before appearing on true crime documentaries. 3, he repeated softly. Months. I considered diving through the window. The Skyline Lounge was on the 42nd floor, but honestly? It still felt safer than this conversation. Lachlan dragged both hands down his face. Oh my God. Then his eyes snapped back to mine. Sharp. Dangerous. Humiliated. You heard everything? I tried diplomacy. Not everything. Hope flickered across his face. I ruined it immediately. Just, most things. He closed his eyes. You're unbelievable. I pointed at him. You kept calling me your wife. You kissed me first when we were children. That was 20 years ago. And I never recovered emotionally. The entire restaurant went silent again. Somewhere nearby, I heard a woman choke on champagne. Lachlan realized what he'd just yelled. His soul visibly attempted to leave his body. I buried my face in my hands. Oh my God. No, Lachlan snapped immediately, you don't get to oh my God me right now. Do you have any idea what you put me through? I peeked through my fingers. You mean besides the free entertainment? His jaw dropped. Free entertainment? Yes, I admitted shamelessly. Do you know how hard it was pretending not to hear you saying things like bankrupt me then, wifey, with a straight face? The tips of Lachlan's ears turned violently red again. You heard that too? You literally whispered it right in front of me. I thought deaf people couldn't hear. Well, apparently recovered people can. We stared at each other. Then simultaneously. You're insane. You're insane. Silence. Then, somehow, we both started laughing. Real laughing. The kind that hurt your ribs. The kind that left you breathless. Lachlan sank back into his chair, covering his eyes with one hand. I genuinely thought you hated me, he admitted quietly. That startled me enough to stop laughing. What? He lowered his hand slowly. For once, there was no arrogance on his face. No smugness. No teasing. Just something painfully honest. You fought with me constantly, he said. You looked annoyed every time I showed up. Half the time you wouldn't even text me back. I blinked at him. Lachlan, you literally started every argument. Yes, because you paid attention to me when we fought. I stared. This man. This absolute disaster of a man. You learned ASL just to annoy me? I learned ASL because you stopped talking to everyone after the accident, he corrected quietly. And I couldn't stand it. Something in my chest twisted painfully. Oh. Oh. Suddenly, 1,000 little moments over the past 3 years rearranged themselves in my mind. Lachlan showing up every day. Lachlan attending doctor appointments he pretended were coincidental. Lachlan glaring at anyone who mocked my hearing. Lachlan sitting beside me during silent dinners even when we were supposedly fighting. Lachlan. 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 All this time, I thought we were rivals. Meanwhile, this idiot had apparently been in love with me since childhood. The realization hit so hard my face started heating up. Unfortunately, Lachlan noticed immediately. His eyes narrowed. Then slowly. Very slowly. A smug grin spread across his face. Oh, he said softly. Absolutely not. I pointed at him threateningly. Don't. Too late. His grin widened into something devastating. Wifey's blushing. I am not. You are. You hallucinate regularly. You called me handsome earlier. That was scientific observation. Lachlan leaned closer across the table. So you do think I'm handsome? I crossed my arms. You kept a stolen photo of me in your pocket like a Victorian widow. That's different. How? Because I'm deeply unwell. I lost the battle against laughter again. Lachlan watched me quietly for a moment. His expression softened. Then, more gently this time, he asked. So? My heart skipped. So? Now that you know. His voice dropped lower. Careful. Almost vulnerable. When is Wifey finally going to fall for me? 3 months later, I stood in the middle of Lachlan Doyle's penthouse kitchen at 2 in the morning wearing one of his hoodies and arguing with him over dumplings. This is your fault, I informed him seriously. Lachlan looked deeply offended. How is the exploding pot my fault? You distracted me. With what? I pointed at him dramatically. With your face. Lachlan immediately looked pleased with himself. You think I'm pretty? You're impossible. You moved into my apartment voluntarily. That was temporary. You've lived here for 11 weeks. I opened my mouth. Then closed it again. Traitorous technicalities. Lachlan smirked and slid a plate of dumplings toward me. The kitchen lights were dim, the city glittering outside the floor-to-ceiling windows behind him. He'd loosened his tie hours ago, sleeves rolled to his elbows, looking unfairly handsome for a man burning midnight dumplings. Sometimes I still caught myself staring at him. Not because I didn't know he was attractive before. But because now I knew the truth behind every glance he gave me. Every cup of coffee he brought me. Every fake argument. Every stupid excuse to stay close. It changed things. softened them. He noticed me zoning out and raised an eyebrow. What? I blinked. Nothing. Liar. I walked over and leaned against the counter beside him. For a second neither of us spoke. Then quietly, I asked. How long? Lachlan didn't pretend not to understand. He stared down at the dumplings. Since you kissed me. I almost choked. We were 6. You were my first kiss, he said defensively. That's traumatic. I laughed so hard I had to grab the counter for support. Lachlan looked annoyed for exactly 3 seconds before his expression softened too. Then he reached over and fixed the hood slipping off my head. Such a tiny gesture. So unbearably gentle. You know, I murmured, normal people confess instead of psychologically tormenting their crush for 20 years. I tried being nice once in middle school. And? You asked if I had a fever. Fair. He huffed a laugh. The silence afterward felt warm. Comfortable. Home. Then his eyes drifted toward me again. That look. That unbearably soft look he only wore when he thought I wasn't paying attention. Unfortunately for him, now I could hear every stupid thing he muttered too. My girlfriend is cute, he whispered absent-mindedly. I smiled slowly. What was that? Lachlan froze. His ears immediately turned red. Nothing. Oh no, I said sweetly. Use your words, Mr. Doyle. He glared at me. Then reluctantly muttered louder. My girlfriend is cute. I leaned closer. HM? Still couldn't hear you. Lyra. Again. Lachlan grabbed my waist suddenly and pulled me flush against him. I yelped. His forehead rested against mine as he narrowed his eyes. You're enjoying this way too much. A little. His thumb brushed softly against my cheek. Then, quieter this time, with no embarrassment left at all, he said. My girlfriend is cute. My heart did an embarrassing little flip. Damn him. I wrapped my arms around his neck. Well, I whispered, my boyfriend's pretty cute too. Lachlan stared at me. Actually stared. Like he still couldn't believe this was real. Then he kissed me. Warm. Slow. Smiling halfway through because I accidentally laughed into it. Outside, the city lights glittered endlessly below us. Inside, the dumplings burned completely black. Neither of us cared.